This happened last week. I'm 34 years old and a military historian. I thought my trip to the abandoned Nevada nuclear testing range would be easy. Just me, my notebook, and the hot sun beating down on cracked earth. I had no idea it would end up haunting me. The ground crunched beneath my boots. Rusted machinery poked out of the dirt like forgotten skeletons. I felt uneasy. The wind carried whispers, and I tried to focus. I wanted to document everything. I was there for history. After a few hours, I stumbled upon a bunker. Inside, I found an old file. My heart raced as I flipped through the pages. They told the story of a sergeant who vanished during a secret test. The further I read, the stranger it became. A local had mentioned seeing something odd that day, a flash, a noise. Was it real, or just a cover-up? I had to know. The days passed, and I chose to stay. I felt compelled to uncover more. I heard things at night. Sounds that crept in the dark. Whispers floated through the air, but I couldn't make out the words. Maybe it was just my imagination. That night, I dreamed of the sergeant. It was vivid. His face kept appearing, drenched in fear. I felt a sense of panic wash over me. I woke up gasping, a chill gripping my chest. This wasn't just a dream anymore. Something was off. That I pushed the dreams aside, but they only grew stronger. Each night, I searched for meaning in those shadows. What happened to him? I combed through the logs, but they only hinted at something terrible. I felt like I couldn't escape the pull of that place. The quiet swallowed me whole. One evening, I left my tent and walked outside. I felt an invisible force tugging me toward a cracked concrete slab. My feet moved of their own accord. The air was thick, and I shivered. I stopped, uneasy, then I heard it, a whisper, soft and urgent. It seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. I turned around, but there was nothing. I stood frozen, heart pounding in my chest. That's when I saw him. A figure stood in the shadows. My breath hitched. I blinked. He was gone. My mind raced. Was I losing it? Was this the sergeant? I needed answers. That I stumbled back, my heart racing. I wanted to run, but I couldn't move. I felt trapped in a web of fear and uncertainty. I couldn't tell where the line was anymore. Reality and dreams blurred together. The next day, I searched again. I couldn't shake the feeling he was watching me. I scoured the bunker, the whispering wind growing louder. Each rustle in the grass sent chills down my spine. As night fell, I found myself outside again. The darkness closed in. The whispers returned, cutting through the silence. I felt like he was right beside me, like he wanted me to find him. But what would I find? I didn't know if I wanted the truth anymore. Then I heard his voice, clear as day. Help me. I spun around. No one was there. I was alone, yet I felt his presence more than ever. I knew I had to confront the darkness. I had to find out what happened to that sergeant. Would I vanish too? I woke up the next morning feeling different. The air around me felt charged, like static before a storm. I couldn't shake the feeling of dread. I forced myself to grab my notebook and pencil, determined to push through it. I needed to stay focused. I rifled through the old files again, looking for any hint I might have missed. The sergeant's name was etched in my mind now, Staff Sergeant Harris. I don't know why it mattered so much, but it did. I needed to understand who he was, what had happened during that fateful test. As I searched, I stumbled upon a map tucked in between the pages. It was old, the lines faded, but marked with locations I hadn't seen before. One spot in particular caught my eye, an experimental site A. I felt a tug in my gut. It was different from where I'd been, and it screamed for exploration. I gathered my gear, feeling the weight of the day settling on my shoulders. The path to the site was overgrown, the brush dense and tangled. I pushed through, my heart racing with each step. I felt like I was walking deeper into a secret, one that someone desperately wanted to keep hidden. Minutes later, I broke through the foliage. There it was, an enormous crater, a remnant of some past devastation. The ground peaked and dipped, like a gaping maw. It was unsettling. I scanned the area, but nothing was visible except for dust and ash. That's when I noticed something gleaming faintly at the edge of the crater. As I approached, I realized it was a piece of metal, half buried. I knelt down, pulling away dirt and debris. It was a dog tag. My stomach dropped. It had Harris's name on it. It felt wrong to find this. I didn't belong here, digging up what had been buried for so long. I held it, trembling. Why was it here? What had truly happened to him? Questions spiraled in my mind. Then, a chill crawled up my spine that I turned, suddenly aware that I wasn't alone. Shadows shifted around me, creeping along the edges of my vision. I glanced back at the crater. The whispers returned, but this time, they were louder, more insistent. I strained to make sense of them. They felt angry, begging for release. Panic rushed through me as I backed away. My eyes darted around, searching for anything, any sign of life. That's when I caught a glimpse again. The figure. Harris. He stood at the edge of the crater, a spectral image against the bright sky. His face was gaunt, his eyes full of anguish. "Help me," he mouthed again, but this time the whisper echoed in my ears. I stumbled backward, scarcely believing what I was seeing, when the ground beneath me gave a sudden tremor. Dust swirled around, and the whispering grew into a cacophony. Terrified, I turned and ran, the weight of the dog tag heavy in my pocket along with the realization that I could be next. As I dashed back through the trees, a voice stopped me cold. "You can't escape." I froze, heart racing. I had to face this. I had to confront the truth of what happened. But could I handle what I was about to uncover? I stumbled through the dense trees, the voice replaying in my head. "You can't escape." What did it mean? I felt like I was part of some twisted game. Panic churned in my stomach as I pushed harder against the undergrowth, branches scratching at my skin. Finally, I broke into a small clearing and collapsed against a tree, gasping for air. My heart pounded like a drum in my chest. I couldn't believe what I had just witnessed. Harris, his ghost, or whatever that was, had been so real. The dog tag in my pocket weighed heavily, a reminder that I might not fully understand the danger I was facing. Taking a deep breath, I recalled the blueprints I had seen before. The crater, the experimental site. It all connected. I couldn't walk away, not now. I had to know more. I needed to understand why I had seen him. After a moment of calm, I took out my notebook. My fingers trembled as I scribbled down everything I could remember. What had he been trying to tell me? I needed a plan. If there were answers buried out there, I had to dig them up. That I decided to return to the site armed with more information this time. Maybe there were records nearby, something that could explain the experiments conducted there and Harris's connection to them. I took a moment to steady my nerves, visualizing the map in my mind. As the path opened before me again, I felt a return of that static charge in the air. I shook it off, determined to uncover the truth. I wasn't going to let fear control me anymore. When I reached the crater again, the shadows felt thicker. This time, I searched for anything that seemed out of place. I noticed a small wooden structure partially hidden by overgrowth. My heart began to race. What if it contained something important? I pushed through the brambles, vines snapping under my weight, and found a door slightly ajar. My instincts screamed at me to turn back, but curiosity got the better of me. I stepped inside. The air was stale, thick with dust. Rows of old equipment lined the walls, forgotten and draped in cobwebs. Among the clutter, one machine caught my eye. Its screen flickered to life as I approached, casting an eerie glow. I pressed a button. The screen displayed a single phrase, "Experiment log, subject H-293." I felt a chill run down my spine. Was this about Harris? H-293. I mouthed the words silently. I had to dig deeper. But as I leaned closer, a loud clang echoed from behind me. I spun around, heart racing. Someone else was here. My breath caught in my throat as I strained to listen, fully expecting to see a figure in the darkness. Suddenly, the machine whirred ominously. The lights flickered, and I realized I had made a terrible mistake by activating it. I needed to get out. Fast. Just as I turned to run, the door slammed shut, plunging me into darkness. Every instinct screamed for me to escape, but I knew I had just crossed a line I would never be able to uncross. The darkness was suffocating. I pressed myself against the wall, my breath coming in shallow gasps. I reached out, my hands searching for some way to open the door, but it felt solid, unyielding. Panic gripped me. Had someone trapped me inside? I turned my attention back to the flickering screen, the only source of light. Experiment log, subject H-293. Whoever this was, whatever they had done, I had to know more. The urge to uncover the truth battled with my fear of what I might find. With trembling fingers, I pressed another button. The screen filled with data, lines of text and charts that made little sense. But then, a single passage caught my eye. H-293 showed heightened responses to stimuli. Subject exhibited signs of distress. Harris. Was he H-293? I felt a surge of guilt rise in my chest. Had this place done something to him? As I pieced it together, I caught movement in my peripheral vision. I turned, heart pounding, but there was nothing more than the ominous shadows swirling in the corners. The whirring machine seemed to grow louder, its hum vibrating in my bones. I had to get out. I moved towards the door again, my shoulder colliding with a metal panel. It gave a little. I strained against it, pushing with all my might. Suddenly, I heard a voice, low and chilling. "You're not supposed to be here." I froze. The sound washed over me like ice water, forcing me to stop and listen. It came from just outside, echoing in the silence. Who was out there? Were they watching me? "Get out," the voice said again, this time clearer, almost demanding. "You don't understand what you've stumbled into." I pressed my back against the door, trying to remain silent. Every instinct told me to flee, but I was trapped. I opened my mouth to respond, but no words came. Then the lights flickered violently, plunging me back into darkness. The air felt electric, charged with danger. The voice faded, leaving only silence. My thoughts raced. Who had spoken? What exactly had I uncovered? I found the control panel again and pressed a series of buttons, willing the door to budge. My hands were slick with sweat as I scanned the screen for anything that could help. Just then, it shifted, and a new document flickered into view. Last week at a nuclear testing range, a sergeant vanished without a trace. My heart dropped. It was about Harris. I had to see more. But just as the screen brightened, a loud crash erupted beside me, shattering the stillness. I pivoted, and there, in the doorway, stood a figure shrouded in shadow. My body went rigid, fear coursing through me. The air crackled with tension as I faced the unknown. That was when I knew I had crossed a line. My next move could decide my fate. The figure in the doorway stepped forward, and I stumbled back, nearly losing my balance. My heart raced. Could this be a friend or foe? The dim light caught the edges of their face, a gaunt expression, eyes wide with intensity. "Who are you?" I gasped, trying to sound braver than I felt. My voice trembled, betraying me. "Does it matter?" They replied, their voice low and gravelly. "We need to leave. Now." I opened my mouth to protest but thought better of it. I could feel the urgency in their tone. "Harris," I whispered, catching myself. "Later. If he is still alive, we'll find him," the figure insisted, stepping closer. But we don't have time to waste. Without thinking, I took a step toward them. What do you mean? What happened? They clasped my arm, firm yet not aggressive. They're coming. You can't let them catch you here. Questions swirled in my mind, but I forced them down. This wasn't about me anymore. I needed to find Harris. I pulled away from their grasp, glancing at the screen. What about the data? It mentions Harris. The figure's eyes flared for a moment. Data can get you killed. We need to go before they lock this place down. Before I could respond, a loud banging echoed through the corridor outside. My pulse quickened. What was that? They will find you, the figure said sharply. Trust me. Move. I hesitated, fear battling against my instincts. But just then, the air grew colder, and the faintest sound of footsteps approached. I made my decision. I followed the figure, my heart pounding as we darted past the door and into the shadows of the hallway. The corridors twisted and turned, each corner a new wave of dread. I stumbled slightly but kept pace. Who are they? I dared to ask, breathless as I glanced back. They're from the facility. They've been watching you, my companion replied, glancing over their shoulder. They know you're here. Why? What do they want? I panted. They're after H-293, after Harris. They think you know where he is, came the quick reply. You can't let them take you back. The prospect of being hunted sent adrenaline coursing through my veins. I had to figure out a way to protect myself and Harris. But as we turned a sharp corner, the figure suddenly stopped, lifting a finger to their lips that I froze, barely breathing. Through a small window in the wall, I could make out a group of people in lab coats. Their conversation was too muffled to make out, but the urgency was clear. They were searching. Now what? I whispered, fear creeping into my voice. Wait for my signal. Inside, my mind raced. I had to think fast. That was when I noticed a door slightly ajar at the end of the hallway. A glimmer of hope sparked in me. But would it lead us to freedom or deeper into the nightmare? Ready? My companion whispered, eyes locked on the approaching figures that I nodded, tension coiling within me. The next moments would determine everything. We waited in silence, the air thick with tension. I could hear footsteps growing louder, countless conversations unintelligible but urgent. My heart raced, and I could feel the figure beside me tense. After what felt like an eternity, they lowered their finger and nodded, signaling for us to move. I turned toward the ajar door, pushing it open just enough to slip through. My companion followed closely behind, closing the door quietly. Inside was a small storage room, dimly lit by a flickering bulb. Boxes were strewn about, filled with old equipment and dusty files. The moment felt surreal, like a scene in a film. What now? I whispered, glancing around for options. Look for anything that can help us, they murmured, scanning the space. We might need supplies. I rifled through several boxes, my hands shaking slightly. I found a flashlight that flickered to life, sending beams of light dancing around the room. My heart sank, it felt like the only thing standing between us and total darkness. Good, they said, taking it from me and shining it toward a locked cabinet in the corner. Help me with this. I knelt beside them, and together we pulled at the handle, straining against it. Just when I thought we might break it, I heard a soft click. The cabinet swung open. Inside were vials labeled with disturbing codes and several small weapons. We won't be leaving empty-handed, they said as they grabbed a small handgun and a few vials, stashing them in their pocket. That I felt sick looking at the vials. What had Harris gotten involved in? What if the data is in these? We need to know what we're dealing with, I said, my mind racing with worry. We will, they promised. But first, we need to get out of here. I'll get us somewhere safe, then we can figure this out. Suddenly, we heard a loud crash outside the door, followed by shouts. I froze, my blood running cold. "They're coming. Stay low," the figure said, crouching down. The urgency in their voice pushed me into action. I did my best to flatten myself against the wall, whispering a silent prayer. The door rattled violently like it could be kicked in at any moment. My eyes darted around, looking for an escape. I spotted a small window high above the cabinets. "What about that?" I whispered, pointing up. "It's our only option." "Boost me up," they instructed. I hesitated but quickly pressed my hands against their waist, lifting them as they grasped the edge of the window. "Help me through." They grunted as their legs dangled just above me. I set my hands against their feet, pushing as hard as I could. Finally, they made it. Just then, the door burst open, and a group of people flooded into the room, lab coats flapping madly. "Now!" my companion shouted. I looked up to see them pulling themselves out, but I was stuck below. Then everything happened at once. I felt a hand grab my collar, yanking me backward. Adrenaline shot through me, and I twisted free just in time to see my only hope disappearing through that window. "Get her!" one of the lab-coated figures yelled. Panic surged as I planted my feet and bolted for the door, adrenaline lighting a fire in my limbs. But as I raced past the control panel, a flashing red light caught my eye. It blinked urgently, an automated threat alert. A sudden rumble shook the floor. A blaring alarm followed, shrill and insistent. I had triggered something. As I sprinted out of the room, the noise grew louder. I glanced back and took a moment to wonder if one decision could have changed everything. But there was no time for that. I burst into the hall, and I knew I had to find Harris, and fast. The hallway was chaos. Lights flashed red, casting the stark white walls in a malevolent glow. I ran as fast as I could, dodging startled scientists who ducked into doorways. The alarm blared like a wounded animal, urging me to move faster. I had to find Harris. I had to understand why everything was falling apart. I rounded a corner, nearly colliding with a group of people dressed in white lab coats. They looked just as scared as I felt. I pushed past them, trying to remember any map ID seen earlier in the facility. I needed to get to the main lab, the heart of this whole operation. After what felt like a lifetime of sprinting and dodging blocked-off exits, I stumbled onto a wider corridor. It opened up into a small atrium, where the sound of alarms seemed muffled. A row of glass doors led outside, but that wasn't my destination. I needed answers, and Harris was my last connection to the truth. Think. I muttered to myself, scanning for any sign of him. Just then, I heard the unmistakable sound of running footsteps approaching. My heart raced anew. I dove behind a large potted plant, hoping it would hide me well enough. 3 men in suits rushed past, their expressions tight with determination. "We need to find that girl before she reaches the main lab," one of them barked. A creeping chill of fear washed over me. They weren't just lab personnel, these were agents of something deeper, something dangerous. I could hear them discussing containment protocols, and my gut twisted. Whatever was going on here, it was bigger than I'd imagined. I waited, listening intently, but could hardly focus. I had to make a dash for it. As soon as they turned the corner, I bolted to the door they had just passed. It opened with a soft whoosh, and I slipped through, praying it wouldn't trigger another alarm. The air was cooler, and the faint sound of machinery hummed nearby. I stepped cautiously down a new, dimly lit corridor, each footfall echoing in the silence. Then, my heart sank. I spotted a security camera mounted in the corner. Keeping to the shadows, I pressed my body against the wall, breathing shallowly. I could barely make out the darkened control room at the end of the hall. If Harris was in trouble, the control room was ground zero for whatever was happening. I couldn't see anyone, but I could feel the danger lurking in the air around me. Just then, a flash of movement caught my eye. I turned my head slowly. And there he was. Harris. I breathed, but he was facing away from me. He stood hunched over a console, furiously typing on a keyboard. His brow was furrowed in concentration, and I could see the tension in his shoulders. Could he hear the alarm? Was this what he had been working on? I took a cautious step forward, but noticed a dark shape moving behind him. That's when I saw it. A large man in a black uniform, holding a weapon at his side, was creeping closer to him. My heart lurched, I was frozen in place, the weight of my next choice pressing down on me. I needed to act. The life of Harris depended on it. Before I could second-guess myself, I lunged forward, ready to confront the looming threat. I charged forward, adrenaline fueling my every move. "Harris, duck!" I shouted, my voice barely a whisper against the alarm's roar. The black-clad man turned sharply at the sound, eyes narrowing as he caught sight of me. Time slowed. Harris jerked around, confusion flickering across his face. He hesitated, but I couldn't afford for him to be distracted. I pushed past a row of equipment and threw myself at the intruder, adrenaline surging as I tackled him to the ground. His weapon skidded across the floor, clattering out of reach. The man was strong. He rolled me over quickly, pinning me beneath his bulk. His face was inches away, a mask of rage twisted in surprise. I struggled against him, flailing my arms to break free, but he grabbed my wrists, forcing them against the cool floor. "Why are you doing this?" I gasped, desperation creeping into my voice. I needed to buy time for Harris to do something. "Harris," the man growled, "you should have stayed away from here." His breath was hot, and I could see the veins in his neck bulging with effort. "Harris!" I yelled again, hoping to reach him. I caught a glimpse of him stumbling backward, shock written on his face. Then everything changed. The lights flickered above us, a deep hum resonating through the facility. Without warning, the control room began to shake. I could see panic blossom in Harris's eyes as he moved back toward the console, fingers dancing over the keys. "Get down!" Harris shouted. The man on top of me hesitated, glancing up as the sound of alarms shifted pitch. I took my chance, wrenching one arm free and slamming my fist into his jaw. He stumbled back, briefly disoriented. "Now, Harris!" I yelled. Without hesitation, Harris hit a large red button on the console. The vibrations intensifying, I felt the ground tremble beneath me. "We need to self-destruct this section," he said, urgency coloring his voice. "Self-destruct?" I exclaimed. "What are you talking about?" The black-clad man recovered quickly, moving toward Harris again. I lunged forward, grabbing his ankle and pulling him off balance. He crashed to the side, momentarily losing focus on Harris. "Why are you doing this?" I shouted as I scrambled to my feet. "Because you don't understand what you're messing with," he growled, regaining his footing and advancing on us again. Harris was a flurry of motion behind the console. "I'm trying to stop it. There's no time." An explosion of sound ripped through the room, and a massive screen behind the console flickered to life. Numbers began ticking down in bright red. "What did you do?" The intruder roared, panic flooding his voice. Before I could respond, the man lunged again, but I sidestepped him, making a dash for Harris. "We had to get out." I grabbed his arm and pulled him away from the console. "Let us go," I urged. But as we turned to flee, the lights went out completely. A flash of white lit the space, and then everything went dark. I could only hear Harris's breathing beside me, fast and frantic. The only sound that remained was the countdown, echoing like a chant of doom, and then I realized, with a sinking feeling in my gut, we weren't alone anymore. The silence stretched, tense and thick. My heart beat loudly in my ears. I couldn't see, but I could feel the dread wrapping around me like a shroud. The countdown continued, each second a reminder of our fleeting time. "Harris," I whispered, my voice barely breaking the oppressive darkness. "Can you see anything?" "No," he replied, panic creeping into his tone. "We need to move. Now." I fumbled around in the dark, trying to orient myself. The acrid smell of burned circuitry stung my nostrils. I reached out blindly and felt something solid, metallic, cold. It was part of the console. Suddenly, a figure moved in the darkness, brushing against my shoulder. I flinched and spun around, barely suppressing a scream. "It's me," Harris hissed. "We have to find a way out." I nodded, though he couldn't see. I was grateful to have him close. "What if that guy comes back?" "I don't know," he said, his voice steady despite the fear quaking underneath. "But we can't stand still. If this facility is going to blow, we need to get to the exit." The floor felt disorienting under my feet. I took a small step back, trying to gauge the layout in the dark. "Which way?" "Right," he whispered, and together we stumbled in that direction, moving cautiously, listening intently. The countdown echoed like a sinister heartbeat. Each second passed felt like an eternity. 5 minutes until detonation, a cool, emotionless voice announced from the console. "Great," I muttered. "Just great." We kept moving, hope faltering with each shuffling sound around us. Then I heard a scrape echoing just ahead. My stomach dropped. "What was that?" I asked, fear creeping in again. "I don't know," Harris said, inching closer to me. "We need to check it out." As we rounded a corner, dim light from a blinking emergency exit sign flickered in the distance. Relief surged through me, but that feeling was short-lived. The shadow of a figure loomed before us just outside that light. My breath caught in my throat. "There." I pointed, but it was too dark to see who or what it was. "Stay behind me," Harris said, drawing nearer. He stepped forward, voice firm. "Who is there?" The figure shifted. I held my breath. My heart thundered in my chest. "Don't move," a cold voice came from the darkness, tauntingly calm. Instinct kicked in. I took a step back, pulling on Harris's arm. "We have to go." "Not so fast." The figure stepped into the light. It was another man dressed similarly to the first, face obscured by shadows. "What do you want?" Harris demanded, fear turning his voice harsh. But the man just smiled, revealing teeth in a predatory grin. "Your escape route just got sealed." Then, without warning, he lunged at us. We had no time to react. That's when I saw an exit door shutting automatically just behind him, locking us in. "Run!" I shouted, and we both turned back the way we had come, hearts racing. The countdown droned on, but that was the least of my worries. Something cold settled in my stomach. We were trapped, alone, and the clock was ticking. The alarms blared, an unyielding reminder of our imminent fate as we sprinted through the twisting hallways, heartbeats matching the rhythm of the countdown. Every second felt like a lifetime, the weight of desperation pushing me faster. I glanced back at Harris, who was barely keeping pace, his face awash with panic. "We can't let them catch us," I shouted, urging him on. We darted into another corridor, the walls closing in. Harris's breath came in ragged gasps, and I felt guilty for dragging him into this chaos. None of this, the darkness, the shadows, the endless whispers, was supposed to involve him. I wrestled with the fear bubbling up inside me as I made a decision. "We need to find an exit," I said, my voice cutting through the sirens. Suddenly, Harris halted, staring at a metal door set into the wall, its handle worn and rusted. "Here. This could lead us out." He pushed against it, but the door was locked tight. I pounded on it with my fists, rage and frustration igniting my strength. "Open, damn it." Moments later, a pair of figures appeared at the end of the corridor, agents, their uniforms stark against the dull metal. I felt the jolt of panic rush through me. "This way," I urged, pulling Harris toward a side passage that opened up beside us. As we turned the corner, I could hear their footsteps echo, growing more distant. Harris's expression was a mixture of fear and resolute determination. If we can just get to the main lab, there has to be something we can use, maybe a way to shut everything down. We pressed on, moving deeper into the facility. The air thickened, revealing our every hurried breath. I could still feel it, the pull of something unseen, an inexplicable weight that urged us to turn back. I tried to focus, to sift through the frantic sense of urgency, but the whispers returned. "Help me." The faint voice brushed against my mind. My heart seized. It was Harris's name that lingered. Was he connected to this place in ways I couldn't fathom? I shook it off and pushed onward. Just as doubt crept into my mind, I spotted a faint red light flickering ahead. That we stumbled into a large room bathed in darkness, where the emergency lights glowed intermittently. A series of consoles lined the walls, their screens reflecting chaotic data and lines of code. "This is it," Harris exclaimed, moving to one of the computers. I rushed to his side, my hands sweeping across the keys as he rapidly typed. "It's all related to Subject H-293, he mumbled, his eyes darting across the collection of archived files. "They've been experimenting on me, or at least they were." I don't know how long. The room shook violently, sending papers fluttering through the air, slamming into walls and us. An ominous alarm blared louder, and I felt the ground tremor beneath our feet. "This isn't just a self-destruct. It's a full facility shutdown. We need to hurry." As Harris continued to work furiously at the keyboard, I scanned the room, nerves spiking. Behind a series of glass panels, dark figures patrolled, their silhouettes stark against the flickering lights. They were closing in. "They know we're here. Harris, we don't have much time." His fingers flew over the keyboard, sweat trickling down his brow. "Almost there." Just then, the doors burst open. The agents, faces set in stone, flooded in like a swarm. "Stop where you are," one of them shouted, voice dripping with authority. I sank into a crouch, adrenaline racing through my veins. The world narrowed into focus. No longer did I see the men in the room or the impending threat, all I saw was the exit. I made a split-second decision, my heart pounding in rhythm with the escalating alarm. "Go. I'll hold them off." "Hannah." "No." Harris's voice was frantic, but I was already racing toward them, knowing we couldn't allow them to take him. I yelled, "Run!" Just as they turned their guns toward me. As I lunged forward, everything went white. A deafening blast filled my ears, an instant of panic and despair clouding my vision. Then, nothing but a profound silence. When it cleared, I blinked hard against the brightness. I was lying on the ground outside, the world feeling oddly still, as if time hung suspended in that moment. Confusion washed over me as I looked around. "Harris!" I called, my voice echoing against the quiet landscape. I surged to my feet, heart pounding like a drum. The base was gone, just gone. No traces of the chaos inside, the agents, the alarms, the darkness, nothing. But there was no sign of Harris. I felt a hollow ache settle in my chest. Did he make it out? I swept my gaze over the barren land, fear crawling in the back of my mind. The dog tag in my pocket jangled, a haunting reminder of everything we searched for, everything we encountered. The questions loomed large. What had really happened with the experiments? What were they hiding? I had escaped, but at what cost? I staggered away from the site, uncertainty wrapping around me like fog. I didn't know if what I'd witnessed was real or a fever dream. I just knew I'd never leave those memories, nor the specters of those whispers behind. I paused for a moment, looking over my shoulder at the secluded spot that once held the weight of untold secrets. And in that quiet moment, I still felt him. Harris lingered in my thoughts, just out of reach. I moved forward, leaving behind more questions than answers, knowing I had uncovered something profound. Yet still, I would always be haunted by the uncertainty of what truth really lay buried in that desolate place.